Hello, this is Victor at RestoreMercedes.com, and today it's just sort of like a log what I'm doing. Actually, maybe it'll help somebody, I don't know. Well, anyway, this is 2003 CL600 V12 M275 twin turbo engine. Now, the history on this one, and actually what I'm doing here, is the misfire problems, as everybody have these misfire problems, and everybody who has V12 know about them. Now, here what I had is I had to replace one coil on the passenger side because I had to pass inspection, so I had no choice, and because of misfire codes I had to do it. So when I did that, obviously the other coils started to give misfires because they were both original 2003 2002 made. So this side, original coil, would misfire on all cylinders, so it would show misfire codes, and sometimes when you press pretty hard on the gas and you take off fast, some cylinders would shut down. But then generally it actually worked, both coils worked, but you actually had to go maybe 2500 RPMs and that's it. Once you go over, that's it, that's over. The misfires will, the check engine would come on, misfire codes would appear. Now this side, original coil, started to misfire, and then mysteriously misfires disappeared. But that's because a valve cover gasket was leaking badly, so all the spark plugs were flooded with oil. So I guess when I started driving the car, it dried up and misfires went away. Actually, it worked pretty well without any check engine lights for a couple of months. So then when it started the misfiring the first time, I did buy replacement coil, which you see here. This is the one that I bought on eBay. It's 2006 made, and the seller swore by this coil, saying that the coil is perfect and this and that and whatever. It's the same guy who I bought that coil from. That one was brand new. So I one day the suspension hose blew and the engine was covered with suspension fluid. It was very messy and nasty, so I decided that I have to clean the engine once I replaced the hose. So I cleaned the engine, and I guess some water got on the coil, and I started to have hard misfire on 8th cylinder. That was like the code that would never go away, and again, if you drive slow, it would be more or less okay. But once you give it like 3000, 4000 RPMs, misfire would come on, cylinders would start to shut down. And then cylinder number 8, I realized that coil and spark plug B did not work at all. Once I pulled out the spark plug, it was completely not working condition. It was just completely covered with oil and gasoline and all mixed together. It was terrible. But spark plug A on cylinder 8 still worked. So therefore I could have driven the car more or less. So when I got the coil out, I decided to take the spark plugs out, and what I realized is, because I did it in a hurry, when I replaced the valve cover gasket, I blew out all the openings there were spark plugs from old oil, but apparently it wasn't good enough, because once I screwed in the spark plug, the actual threads there were all covered with oil. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to remove all the spark plugs again, clean them up and put them back together, because now everything is very, very dry, no oil is leaking. So going back to the coil, once I got the coil, I changed, put all the new spark plugs in, put the coil in, and I have misfires all over the place except for cylinder 11, which is this one right here. The other ones will show misfires. Number 12 would be the worst. And fault counter shows 60-70 errors on cylinder 12 still. But I removed the coil again, and basically what I did is I cleaned it very nicely. And since I have like 6-7 coils laying around, bad ones of course, I did get all these insulators, sourced them from different coils, and cleaned them and made sure that these are the best looking insulators that I can possibly find. You do not want to reuse them, like I said, many videos, don't try it at home. But I did reuse them because I don't see anything that prevents me from reusing them. As long as they're all nice and not cracked and not dirty, I don't see a reason why they should be replaced. It's a silicone, for Christ's sake. I mean, if it's all not broken or brittle or cracked, or what's gonna happen to it? Nothing really. I mean, I don't understand. Maybe there's some heat properties, yes, maybe. But again, I'm not a chemist. But to me, as long as they're good, I don't see a reason why they should be replaced. So I've sourced them all, and I clean coils as good as I can, all of them. So cylinder, to my delight, actually, this coil started to work very, very well. I had full acceleration. I can actually drive the car hard, but eventually cylinder 12 would still give up. And especially when it's cold, I see lots of fault counter errors on 12th. Upon close inspection, I did realize that cylinder 12 spring, let's see if I can get it on the camera, and maybe now, as you can see, there is some damage on the spring. And even though it doesn't look to be something to be of a concern, but because this coil it's a dual action coil, so what you have is you have the actual spark plus feedback from the coil. Ions have to go back into the coil to see if there is any kind of misfire. So I believe, well, this is my theory, because many theories are out there, and this is sort of like my theory, that if you have dirt and oxidation on the actual springs that attached to spark plugs, then ignition can happen because it's high voltage. But because ions are low voltage, and it has to measure how many ions are left in the gases, and if the contact is not perfect, that information could have been probably lost or transferred to the coil with some errors or whatnot. Who knows? So that is my theory, that because it will spark, but the feedback, it will go this way, the spark itself, high voltage, but the feedback going back into the coil might not be actually very nice, because that oxidation and some rust on the actual spring. Because again, it fires. This coil, the cylinder fires, both A and B. So that is sort of my theory right now. What I'm gonna do is, insulators, again, they were all cleaned up. The next thing what's gonna happen now is I'm going to remove all the spark plugs. I'm gonna clean them all. I'm gonna clean threads again. Make sure that the threads are actually spotless, because that is also very important for feedback signal from the coil, from the actual spark plug gases, for misfire monitoring. So that's what I'm gonna do. If I will not be successful, I know that we have cylinder 11, which are these two cassettes. These never misfired. Now I'm going back to my old coil. If you look at the old coil, I'm doing this on the street in front of the house, so it's sort of unprofessional, but I don't want to drive back to the shop and then get the car all hot. So that's why I chose to do it in front of the house. Now what we have here is, this is original coil. Now this coil, this is the one that came from the vehicle. As you can see, the production date is 02. This is 2002 coil. And I know that spring and everything is clean on the cassette end, but spark plug B on cylinder number 8 does not work with this coil. So most likely in this particular case, I have an issue with the cassette, with this piece. Therefore I have lots of misfires, like 100 something counts of errors on this particular one, whereas spark plug A actually did work. Now looking inside, this is another possibility where it's possible to actually have issues. I did cut just a section because I don't need to cut the whole cover off, because I don't really care for the rest of the cylinders. They worked. But you do want to make sure that these crimps, these are little tiny little welds, you do want to have all the welds to be in good condition. So in my case, they seem to be fine. especially this one, questionable cylinder. It seems to be okay, but what I'm gonna do is, if I'm not successful with that coil right now, I will replace cylinder number 11 from that coil that never misfired ever. I would replace cylinder number 11 cassettes into this coil, because this coil actually works, but cylinder 8 is bad. So this is sort of like workaround when you want to play around with like building one coil out of two coils or whatever, if you have that kind of possibility. But other than that, you would need to replace the coil, unfortunately. I see on the internet that you got these guys out there that they just actually make the rebuilds. They make the rebuilds, but I don't know how well the rebuild is going to work and how long it's going to last. Now, going back in there, we're going to do is we're going to clean up threads on each and every plug, so we must. And that's basically all that's going to happen today. And I really hope that cylinder 12 is gonna start working properly, and the other ones will also work properly. Basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a second video probably and show you the readings from off the fault counter, and show you what's going on with fault counter on cylinder 12. Okay, so that's basically all for now. This is Victor at restoringmercedes.com. Thanks for watching.